We start with Dwarf Prince Durin on his way back to smack a bitch up, given his dad's gone mad and killed all his men to mine the mining shit. But first makes a quick stop to smooch his bitch up, before heading off to confront the king and demanding he take off that evil ring what keeps whispering for him to do a load of bad stuff. But said king just turns around and says,
"You're not that guy, pal, trust me, you're not that guy,"
before smashing up the foundations of their own house and finding a whole chamber of that miracle mithril muck.
Nice.
But unfortunately, they also find it's the gaff of a giant fuck-off hell beastie, who reckons that smashing up his doors and barging into his cosy comfy cavey home just ain't fucking on, son. Luckily though, the king's love for his injured son compels him to his senses to slip off the ring, and then leap to his death taking on a giant fire demon armed with only a small axe, because reasons.
okay.
Anyway, after the opening titles, phony fakey Gandalf, who they keep pretending totally ain't Gandalf but clearly is because come on bro, is confronted by that dark wizard fella, who hilariously tries to pretend that he's an old friend and on the up and up.
Really?
And after the bounty hunters turn up and totally ruin the whole scheme by publicly holding the half-wits for ransom, Gandalf refuses to join him, and promptly gets the local landscape demolished without planning permission and the stores buried under a bunch of boulders for their trouble. Elsewhere, Pharazôn frames the Blind Black Queen as a traitor in league with Sauron, after somehow surviving that racist sea beast what refused to do a hate crime and munch up an ethnic minority bird a few epis back, and then arrests all of her remaining faithfuls to cement his naughty coup for the throne. So naturally, Budget Emma Watson runs off to warn her dad to get the heck out of Dodge, who in turn runs off to extract the Queen. But she don't want to cuck out like a total melt, and tells him to pick up that bloody sword and pull himself together already. Meanwhile, back at Eregion, a gung-ho elf who's clearly watched too much Hardcore Henry and also the season 6 premiere of The Office.
Hardcore, parkour! Hardcore!
Parkours his way into oblivion given he thought he had infinity plot armour, only to find out the hard way that he ain't the main character in this series and instantly dies without anyone giving a hoot. And certainly not Galadriel, who just waltzes past his body like yesterday's turd, leading some civilians to safety, who are then all instantly caught by orcs like a bunch of muppets and taken off to see Ada.
No!
Speaking of total mogadons, old celery Brimboz's useless meat sack is being used as target practice after he stupidly trusted a random bloke who came out his fireplace and told him he was some sort of angel fella there to make his dreams come true in return for some sweet sweet gems. Oh, some shit. And after he refuses to tell him where he's hidden the rings what he spent weeks to months crafting, he musters all his strength to say some hurty words to Anatard, aka Sauron, aka Halbrand, aka I don't even fucking know anymore, and then totally gets himself deaded, just like Galadriel's 50 Shades of Grey kinky BDSM dream earlier in the series. And poor Tardface just can't believe his business partner just used his last words to tell him what a right dickhead he looks in that awful wig, and also that the Rings of Power will totally destroy him in the end. And after clearly hitting a nerve for some reason, the darkest of Dark Lords sheds a little tear, whilst the orcs burst in and ask him if he has a name. And he just says, "Well, I have many names, pal, and right now, it may as well be Pussy Old Bitch with the amount of salt currently flowing around here." Also elsewhere, Isildur, aka Numenor's #1 Aladdin lookalike, says goodbye to Theo and then snogs his hobo floozy, despite her reuniting with her long-lost fiancé just the other night.
You're such a bad person.
Before learning that his dad is now an enemy of the state and that pussy old white soy boy's now in charge out here, who tells him you better calm yourself down, pal, or else I'll have my men slaughter your bum buddy Beric, given he's more heroic than you. You know, the arachnophobic horse what somehow tracked his owner down in a cave just by running around the landscape aimlessly for days. And he says they'll only give the village winter supplies if they provide the city with timber, which is a bit of a problem now they recently found out that the woods are literally alive and promised a bunch of homicidal talking trees not to carve them up no more.
Uh-oh, spaghetti-o!
Anyway, Gladys then does another trucy team up with Ada, now he has their ring what's also cleaned up his fucking acne, and because he promised to kill Sauron with them and then never ever do any more bad things ever again. But unfortunately, he's hilariously tricked by that family man orc who just wanted to go cottaging with his crusty bucktooth floozy wife and Sprog, and ironically gets himself subjected to the same fate as Sauron himself back in the opening epi. A said Sauron fella soon starts smacking swords with a 5'2" miserable elf with perpetual PMT, whilst the orcs then go full Nazi and totally torture King Gilgachad and the elfy flatface fella by burning all their books and friggin' scrolls right in front of their face. And before you can say, or why didn't you get with the times and digitise them so you can back them up to the fucking cloud already, they bring in the first black elf with a serious lack of facial expressions, who's apparently just walked off his seemingly mortal stab wound what Adar gave him last epi.
Actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience.
As Sauron's now losing his fight so badly that Gladys ends up knocking different fucking shapes out of him, including one of her. And before she can say, "Gosh, I really am miscasting this role," he gets the upper hand and stabs her so hard with his hat that he squeezes her juices out like a fucking lemon. And it looks like it's curtains for the number one stunning and brave girl boss who always looks chronically constipated for some reason. Whilst back at Eregion, the midget army finally turns up and saves the royal elves from becoming barbecue meat, as Elrond asks Na'vi where the fuck they've been for the past 12 hours, given Durin promised him an army and now their entire gaff is burned down and a bunch of crusty goblins have smoked their library, technical science records and also killed Elrond's little horsey. But Na'vi says, "Sorry mate, but we've got problems of our own, son." And the prince can't be here in person to deliver on his promise because his daddy king just got yeeted by a lava monster while we woke up under our basement and shit. So you better take what you can get, you ungrateful git, and shut up about it already. Meanwhile, Sauron puts himself at risk of being Me Too'd into oblivion by asking a defenceless lady to quote,
Give me your ring.
"Just steady." But naturally, she refuses to put out, nor give in or give up her ring, and casually just steps back off the cliff with said ring and dignity intact.
So good for you, girl. Go on.
And Sauron is so furious about stupidly letting his prisoner get so close to the fucking edge of the cliff face and thereby batty means of escape that he shanks up the poor family man orc in a fit of rage, who promptly goes off to the little old cottage in the sky. Gilgachad and co then find Galadriel's body, where Elrond totally cucks and finally decides to slip on the ring just to do this one thing, and promptly heal up the poisoned wounds of the stepmum he recently got freaky with the combined power of the rings.
The power of
Whilst the Half-Foot gals help the poor stores pick up the remnants of their entire lives to find a new place to squat after making friends for the first time in years, which just resulted in everything they've ever known come literally crashing down around them. They then say goodbye to that strange wizard fella, what they once found half nude in a crater because reasons what still ain't explained, and tells him that they have to go with the stores and teach him how to be gypsy travellers. And besides, it's way too dangerous travelling with you, given you keep blowing us away with your magics, but not in a good way. And after finding another random stick on the floor, he heads back to Thomas Bombadil's gaff to say he's going to stay and be his wizardy apprentice now he's finally got rid of them two sponges, and soon realises it was all a sneaky test, and one which he passed with flying colours, given he chose friendship over power, and has now been rewarded with a magical staff and a name by Tom Bom Bom Bom. And in a shocking twist, which literally everyone and their nan had already seen coming and totally guessed last season, turns out said name is indeed Gandalf after all.
I fucking knew it!
And soon sits by the fire and joins in with his mate, narcissistically singing a song dedicated to and all about himself.
Ha! Gay!
Later, Durin Jr. holds a funeral for his daddy, before being told that a bunch of his people have watched too much House of the Dragon over the summer and are now trying to make a claim on the throne, given he's been broke for weeks and also gets bullied by a bunch of midgets at work. And before you can say, I guess we're all just ignoring the fact we just found a huge primordial demon living under our feet or just killed the actual king and are now just going about our normal day pretending it never happened, we end with Galadriel waking up in the elves' new place of sanctuary totally healed, as they all vow to get vengeance on that naughty Sauron fella what destroyed their holy city, incinerated their cultural history, and used the dying body of their greatest blacksmith as a fucking dartboard.
First try.
And that's it. That's the final epi. Though my favourite part was how the stores would apparently rather head off into the desert to die, rather than just clear up some rubble around their village. Though I can totally relate, because I usually just rent out a brand new house rather than bother to tidy my room when there's too many crisp packets on the floor and I can't see the carpet no more. And speaking of nonsense, why is it now so easy to walk off what should be fatefully fatal stab wounds in this show? Like, Arondir got shanked up last epi, yet is now totally fine. As was Gladys in this epi, who even managed to get back up, give a defiant speech and go cliff jumping before finally looking injured. And look, Even the ginger elf somehow survived his stab wounds and all. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Consider ringing that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time, and I'll ruin almost 100 years of lore and highly regarded literary achievement with you in Season 3.